What's up, everybody? It is the Black Maverick here again with another video. Okay, so we're still following the Mighty Martin series. Last week's video should be up here, I believe. So if you haven't seen it yet, you're going to want to watch that so that you know what's happening right now. Let's get into this one. Chapter 3. A Whole New World. When the truck arrived, it let out a sound of steam being released before ultimately coming to a rest. Then the doors opened, and soldiers stood by the doors to help Martin and Paul out. When Paul left the vehicle, he held up his identification and told Martin to follow him. Martin followed along and looked around at the amazing structures encompassing the entire base. Large, armored buildings with floodlights and energy shielding wrapped around the area. Whoa! What is this place? Martin asked in amazement. This is the Collective's New York City base of operations. It is a base that is 5 square miles of state-of-the-art technology and weaponry. Some of the world's greatest minds have been operating labs here to figure out more efficient ways to combat the demon threat. My specific department has been working to create a portal into the demon realm. We believe that if we can do this, then we'll be able to drop our strongest weapons of destruction into the dimension without doing harm to our own. It could change the tide of the war. Martin was enamored by Paul's words. Wow. That's so cool! But why did you bring me here? Paul stayed silent for a moment and then said, I would rather show you than tell you. When they arrived at Paul's lab, the door opened and they walked inside. There were huge machines with rotating parts and a large circular doorway in the back of the room. Martin saw a handful of men and women in lab coats running tests and running programs on their computers. Martin asked, What is that door? Paul answered, That is where the portal will form, if it all goes well. It'll require a tremendous amount of energy, which is one of the reasons why we have not been able to successfully open one yet. However, there may be a way to circumvent that. You have a special ability. You can see into the spirit world. Before meeting you, I believed that we could only see into that world with our interdimensional image transmitters, or IDITs for short. He pointed to his glasses and said, This is a less powerful one. The larger one is attached to enormous power sources and can allow us to see the details of the spirit world for miles at a time. It does not take much energy to peer into the spirit world. However, there is nothing there that we've seen. Our goal is to find the world that the demons are from. Martin took in all of this information. He was only 13, but he had a keen mind and a love for science. So, where will you find the energy to power the portal to the demon realm? He asked. We're working on that. What is more important is finding the coordinates of the demon realm, so to speak. It's like shooting a penny off a popsicle stick a mile away while blindfolded in a rainstorm. Martin looked at the doctor with a confused and slightly concerned expression. The doctor continued, Things are different now. You have proven that genetics is a component we have been neglecting. You're human, but your genetic makeup has allowed you to see into the spirit realm. If we can just run tests on you to see why that is and what makes you genetically abnormal, then we may be able to do the same to a captured demon and figure out what those coordinates are that I mentioned earlier. Martin was on edge. He was not a fan of hospitals or doctors, so the thought of having tests run on him was not something that excited him. Paul noticed his reluctance and said, Kid, listen. Take some time to figure it out. There's no rush. It isn't like people are dying every single day or anything." Martin looked at him and frowned in disappointment. That was a dirty trick, trying to make me feel guilty like that, Martin thought. "You're right. This is something that needs to happen to save humanity." "I will do it," Martin says nervously. As the days went by, Dr. Paul worked on Martin. He ran various tests on him to learn more about his biological makeup and learn some very important information about Martin. One day, during a test, Dr. Paul spoke to Martin. "You know, Martin, you've been so cooperative these past few weeks. Someone as young as you doing something so honorable is the most impressive thing I've ever witnessed." Martin looked down at his arm while his blood was being drawn. "Doctor, you said that I could save the world if I did this, right? It's what my father would have done. So I'm happy to help." Dr. Paul smiled at Martin and said, "Your father? You've never mentioned him before. What type of man is he?" Martin looked through the window across the room and saw a reflection of himself. For a moment, the reflection appeared to look like his father. He smiled, and when he blinked his eyes, his father's reflection was gone. He spoke and said, "He was a hero. He saved my entire settlement when I was an infant. It cost him his life, but because of his sacrifice, we were able to live peacefully for 10 years. I wish I got a chance to get to know him." Martin looked down and sulked a bit before wiping a tear from his face and smiling again. "One day, I will be just like my dad. Right?" Dr. Paul smiled and responded, "Seems like you're already on your way there." More time passed as the scientists and engineers worked together to innovate the portal technology. They decided to create modules that would connect to the portal generator. These modules would take a sample of DNA from the user and use an algorithm to pinpoint the dimension that the individual derived from. It had only been 2 months since Martin arrived at the collective's base of operations. Today was the day that he would open a portal. In a large room with huge power sources and a portal generator, scientists attached thick power cables to the new modules that they created. The modules attached to the portal generator through another set of cables. Once everything was attached, the experiment was ready to begin. Martin stepped up a few stairs to the portal entrance and held his hand above the module. Dr. Paul stayed behind a thick glass window and spoke through a microphone, saying, "Kid, today's the day. Listen carefully. All you need to do is place your hand on that screen. It'll take a sample of your skin and use it to determine the coordinates of the dimension we're looking for. Once it does that, we'll increase the power and allow the generator to do its thing. Do not step through the portal. Do you understand?" Martin nodded and placed his hand on the module screen. Then, a very precise laser sliced an extremely thin piece of skin from his hand. He didn't even notice. When it was done, it beeped and he moved his hand away. Dr. Paul was notified on his monitor when the sample was ready to be run through the algorithm. He pressed a button to run the sample and watched as numbers rolled across the screen like a slot machine. When the coordinates were ready, the numbers stopped. Lastly, Dr. Paul pushed a lever forward, increasing the power to the portal generator. The portal began to slowly form before Martin's eyes. Martin was enamored at the colors that were on display. He turned and looked back at Dr. Paul with his thumb up, letting him know that he was okay. Dr. Paul put his thumb up as well. His eyes teared up. He believed he was so close to achieving his goal. Before anyone could celebrate, the power sources began to malfunction. Dr. Paul looked at the monitors in shock. The engineers beside him tried to control the machinery by typing in codes to abort the program, but they didn't work, and the computers began to spark and explode. Dr. Paul screamed through the microphone, "Martin, get out of there!" Martin looked back in confusion, and before he could ask what was wrong, the portal expanded wildly, cracking the platform and shaking the room. Martin lost his balance and fell into it. As he fell, he looked back through the portal and saw Dr. Paul screaming and slamming his fist on the protective glass. Martin opened his mouth to let out a scream, but before the sound could come out, the portal imploded and knocked him out. Meanwhile, the lab staff rushed around the portal room and attempted to put out the fires. They sprayed them with a blue foam that hardened over the fires and melted over time, putting the fires out with ease. Dr. Paul was still in shock. He slammed his fist into the desk in front of him, denting the shiny metal. "I was so close to getting to the spirit world. How could this happen? All the effort I put into this project. The missing key was the kid, and now he's gone. Wait, the DNA. We still have samples of his DNA. If I can just use those samples on our next test, everything can still work according to plan." Dr. Paul uploaded the data stored in the computer to a hard drive and left the control room. He ordered the lab technicians to clean things quickly before entering his office. During the events that took place at the collective organization's base of operations, Martin was unconscious in the dirt. A small bird with green feathers and a blue beak began to poke at him while he was down. Martin slowly began to wake up. He said, "Dr. Paul? Doc?" He opened his eyes and observed his surroundings. He saw trees with purple leaves and green trunks. The grass was a violet hue, and the sky was pink. It looked nothing like the planet Earth. There were no buildings in the distance either. "Where am I? This can't be the spirit world. I thought it was supposed to mirror our own." He rubbed his head and noticed a bump on the back of it. While he was inspecting his injuries, he noticed a ruffling in the bushes nearby. "Hello? Is anyone there?" he said fearfully. His heart was beating quickly, and his hands felt clammy. He was not sure if he would be able to fight. He thought, "If I can't fight, I'll just run. Maybe I should just run right now. No, I shouldn't be afraid. Dad was never afraid." As he pondered his next move, a small creature with white fur and a long snout came out of the bushes. It was cute and looked harmless. It walked up to Martin, and he stretched out his hand to pet it. "Aw, you're just a little guy," he said. He stood up and walked with the creature before hearing a ground-shaking step. He looked to his left and saw nothing. He looked to his right and saw trees and bushes. When he looked behind him, he saw a beast at least 7 feet tall with gray and white fur. Its eyes were red, and it had a long snout and enormous teeth. It was growling and looked ready to pounce on Martin. "Oh, no, 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 no," Martin said as he began running away from the behemoth. It pounced at him, and simultaneously, while it was in the air, was kicked in its side, sending it flying into the trees beside it. Martin fell back and watched as a woman with a curved sword and an ancient-looking armor was fighting this monster. She slashed the beast's face and leapt over its attacks. Suddenly, her blade shone like the sun, and she threw it at the hairy monstrosity. It cut through the creature's eye and then came back swiftly. She caught it, and the beast began to charge at her. She ran toward it as well, and before it could strike her down, she slid underneath the monster and cut it straight down the middle. It fell to its knees, splitting partially apart. It was defeated. When she stood up, Martin did as well and walked backward. He was not sure if she was a friend or foe. She turned and looked at him, smiling and waving. He was shocked. She seemed friendly. She approached him and said, "Hey, are you all right?" He nodded and said, "Thanks for saving me. I was a goner for sure." She balled up a fist and nudged his shoulder with it, saying, "No, I'm sure you could have taken him, Martin." Martin smiled and then took 2 steps back, saying, "What? How did you know my name?" She responded, "You're very popular around here, kid. The boy from the human world that could see into our world." Martin didn't realize he was a celebrity. He always ignored his he was always ignored by his peers in his world. So this was a new feeling. "So you know my name? What's yours?" Martin asked the friendly stranger. She stood tall and said, "My name is Evangeline of the Boggy Creek." Martin didn't know where that was, but he enjoyed her confident demeanor. "Do you know how I can get home?" Evangeline looked in the distance and said, "Well, I know of a place where the human world and our world seem to meet. It isn't a portal, though. You'll be able to see into your world there. I hope that's enough." Martin said, "Yes, that's perfect. If I can see into the human world, then I can contact Dr. Paul, and he'll be able to get me out of here." "I don't know who this Dr. Paul is, but if that plan works for you, then we shall go," Evangeline said. She started walking and motioned for Martin to follow her. This was not what Martin expected, but he was excited to be on an adventure. "Mom, Dad, I don't know where I'm going, but I hope you're both proud of me." And that is where we're going to end today's story. So sorry, guys. I had to keep trying to get this eyelash out of my eye. It was killing me. I hope that didn't mess up the video at all. It happens. I have long eyelashes. What are you going to do? But anyways, if you liked this chapter, don't forget to let me know in the comments below and actually tell me what you liked about it and what you hope is going to happen next, okay? Because I'm super excited to hear it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share this with your friends, family. It's great for kids, especially kids around like 5th grade, middle school age that are getting into reading and just want to hear stories. That's what it's for. And I hope that you guys enjoy it, and I hope that the people you share it with will also enjoy it as well. Okay? Thank you so much for being here. Peace.